It's time for round 2 of coverage from the NSRA Street Rod Nationals in Louisville, Kentucky. We've got more swap meet treasures, we've got more old school custom cars, and to finish it off, we've got 4 nitro burning drag cars that may have given me permanent hearing damage. In my previous video from the Street Rod Nationals, I showed you a set of Firestone wheels, extremely rare wheels, and they were sitting on a tarp. Well, as it turns out, underneath that tarp was one of the most incredible collections of intake manifolds I've ever seen. Tunnel rams, dual quad intakes, single 4 intakes, some factory, some aftermarket, blower manifolds. You can see this cross ram with the single 4 plate on it. All sorts of crazy rare stuff in this collection, including right here on the end, we've got some 409 stuff. Factory 409 with 2 4s, single 4, stack injection, a little bit of everything in this collection. This guy also had some really neat Ford stuff, including the Offenhauser 3-deuce intake for a Y-block, and then this Y-block intake manifold is really rare. This was for a marine application, and it's a really low profile intake manifold with 2 Carter side draft carburetors. Also in this guy's booth are some extremely rare Edmunds aluminum cylinder heads. Now these are for flathead 6-cylinder engines, Dodge, Plymouth, and Chrysler applications. And then check out this factory type turbo setup with a carburetor attached to it, and then inline 6-cylinder intake manifolds of all varieties, even 2 4s. That's got to be a rare one. And then look at this. This is the most rare. This is a man-a-fre manifold, and this is like extremely rare. It's for a Chevy or Pontiac 292, 3 carburetors, just crazy stuff. And then there's an 8 carburetor blower top manifold from Scott, with a blower underneath it, of course. And then look at this. This is a Cadillac 4.2 setup from Horn. Just crazy rare. I'm talking about stuff you never see. I found another race car. This time it's an early Camaro, and we see back here that it's tubbed out. It's got a roll cage in it. But otherwise, you know, it kind of looks like a stock-bodied car on the outside. Doesn't have a narrow rear end, but you can peek inside here and see that roll bar. And, you know, it's not a terribly rough car. It's in primer. Not complete, obviously doesn't have an engine, doesn't have a hood, but definitely a good start for a drag car project. Also in my first video from the Nationals, I showed you some early Hemi parts with some Donovan heads. Well, I went back to that same guy and he brought out more stuff, more really rare stuff like this stack injection with gold anodized stacks, and he added to that 392 Hemi, he put a magnesium blower on there and this basically one-of-a-kind fuel injection system. I've never seen anything like it. He said basically it was just something somebody built. Really cool stuff. Here's an incredible set of magnesium Halbrand wheels from the 60s. It's got 16s on the back with tires, skinnies on the front, amazing condition. This guy wanted $4 grand for the set, which is probably fair because they're in such good condition. Here's another wild vintage show car, this time in the swap meet, and you can see it's based off of a Buick Riviera, but it's got completely custom bodywork on the front, back, everywhere. It's got a chop top, it's got a Buick nail head with 6 deuces on it. This thing is really wild. You can see the headers coming right out of the fender. It's got an older paint job on it, but I don't think this was the original paint for this build. I'm imagining this thing probably had lots of stripes and candy and crazy stuff going on with it, but look at the back end. Crazy custom tail lights, no back bumper, just all custom molded in work. And a pretty cool stance with some Goodyear tires on the back too. There's nothing I love more than a custom Corvette, especially if it was done a long time ago. It drives Corvette people crazy to see these old cars cut up, but I just love the personality that comes out with these cars. And this one is really special. This one is owned by Patrick Hampton, and he calls it Burnt Sugar. Now, this thing is a true survivor when it comes to the paint and bodywork. All of these custom modifications like moving the tail lights, smoothing the quarter panels, you know, you'll see a lot of other little tricks on here. All of that was done years ago. And the paint was put on there a long time ago too. And you look inside, it's got button upholstery. That was done a long time ago. Basically, everything you see here is vintage. The only thing he did was make this thing roadworthy. You know, he updated a few things, got the brakes working, put some tires on it, but if you look back here at these tires, these are original M&H pie crust slicks, and they're kind of in rough shape, but he's driving on them, and this thing is just super cool. You see the side pipes, you see this gold paint job. They've taken away some of that trim, no front bumpers, just the little tiny bumperettes, and the tooth grill is cool, the scoop is cool. Everything on this car has a lot of personality and a lot of vintage flavor, but that's because it was done back in the day. Now here's another hot rod Corvette. This one not modified quite as much, but I just love the attitude here. This thing is just flat black. You can see inside of it. It's got a 4-speed. It is just a cool old hot rod. And you can also notice as we get around to the front, it's got a hole cut in the hood, tunnel ram with 2 4s. It's got American Racing 200S wheels on it, big and little tires. I mean, it's got the right stance. It's got the right attitude. You can peek down in there. You can see it's a small block, but this thing is pretty rowdy and definitely another cool Corvette hot rod. One of my favorite cars was this 61 Corvette, and this thing never sat still. I was never able to catch it parked, which is one of my favorite parts about it, is he was actually driving it around. But check out the old school paint job. I'm not sure if that's authentic or if maybe somebody did that recently, but just listen to this thing. It is awesome. Pretty much my favorite car ever is a Henry J. And Kaiser made these cars in the early 50s. They were an economy car. They were cheaply made. They were very lightweight. They were never meant to be a hot rod, but they made really great drag cars back in the 60s. And they were built sort of like this one, which is a modern rendition of old school gassers. You can see the hand lettering goes from front to back, and even on the back section where there should be a trunk lid on most cars, early 51 Henry J's didn't even have a trunk lid. And then you can see the stance on this car is absolutely perfect. They've got the quarter panels radiused, the slicks are sticking out just enough. If we look in here, we'll see some vintage decals on the dash, and we can see an old school tack, some old gauges, old metal flake steering wheel, and a vintage 3-point roll bar, which is a pretty hard piece to find. Some of these were homemade, some of them were made by a company called Lakewood, but this thing has got some really neat pieces. Even though it's got modern paint on it and some modern wheels, this is a really neat car. Right outside the vendor building were 3 really cool vintage hot rods and drag cars, starting with this 55 Chevy, which it's got more of a vintage show car vibe. You can see a chrome roll bar, chrome garnish moldings, lots of flashy details. You see it's got 4 big gauges up on the dash. This thing has got all the tricks that you could do back in the 60s. It's got a big tall stance, it's got a moon tank out front, but then you get over to this one and this is a more serious drag car from the 60s. You can see it's got Raider wheels on there, bi-ply tires. It's got a Chrysler 392 Hemi with a blower, with the Hilburn 4-port fuel injection system. You can see on the back of the blower drive, it's actually got the fuel pump, which is a pretty rare piece back there. But this is a pretty serious, even though it is very flashy and very much a show car quality car, it definitely has some go-fast parts and some real history too. Now, AA meant that it was supercharged, but the Street Roadster class was a class that evolved a lot through the years. It started out with true street cars and morphed into cars like this, which is not something you normally see on the street, and then it got even more advanced into the 70s. But this car's got all the details of a high-end drag car from back in the day. It's got a push bar out back. The slicks are sticking way out of there. Those are Raider slicks as well. It's got a chrome roll bar, tons of gauges in the dash. It's got every piece that you could dream of in the 1960s. This was a high dollar car, definitely a big money build for back in the day. But look at this history. This car was featured in big magazines back in the day. Again, it was a substantial car. It was an attention-getting car, and you can see the old pictures of it. That really ties in with this serious history and just an absolutely amazing restoration. Let's take a look at some more of this history. This is actually from a modern publication called Hot Rod Deluxe, but it's a picture from the NHRA Nationals back in the day, and you can see it smoking the tires. Just look at this masterpiece. I mean, the stance is crazy. Everything is in your face. Bunches of chrome, lots of high-end details. Check out that firewall. That's either polished stainless or it might be chrome plated, but just so much flashy details. And it was just one of 3 amazing cars sitting out here. This one just happened to have the most drag racing history, so of course I concentrate on it the most, but I mean, you can't get much better than this car. And then the paint quality is great too. This car is absolutely one of a kind, and the restoration truly does it justice. Here's another car in that group of 3, this time a 32 Ford 2-door sedan. You can see it's got a chopped top. We look inside, it's got a chrome roll bar. It's got tons of old school 60s details. Check out that tiny steering wheel. Some crazy headers coming off a small block Chevy engine. This thing's got a lot of wild customized details, including a candy apple red paint job with some crazy looking flames ghosted in. It's got a moon tank up front, little cycle fenders on the front, bobbed fenders on the back. I mean, this thing's got the 60s look nailed down completely. If we look at that engine, it's got a pretty rare setup. Even though it's not completely period correct for this style of car, it is pretty crazy. Lots of flashy details. You can see those flames really popping out there as we get into the sunlight. Slicks are sticking out just right. The stance on this thing is perfect. Now here's a car that may not jump out at you at first, but that's because it's a plain Jane 55 Chevrolet 150. No chrome whatsoever. But these cars made really good drag cars back in the day because they were the lightest option of the 55 Chevy models. Now this one's got some drag racing history. It's got a signboard with it with some old school time slips from Mountain Park Dragway, Harrison County Dragway in Indiana, as well as Bluegrass Dragway in Lexington, Kentucky. This thing probably ran in junior stock with a small block Chevy. You can see it still has a small block with fender well headers, but it's probably been updated a little bit from back in the day. And if we look inside, you can see it's still got some old speed parts in there, some gauges in the dash, a tack up on the top of the dash, and then a classic custom steering wheel and fuzzy dice to finish it off. And now for something a little bit different. You don't see a whole lot of shiny new builds on my channel, but this one really stands out. This is a 1961 Chevrolet Impala, and it's done by Scott Sullivan. Under the hood, it's got a 409 with aluminum heads, custom air cleaner with 2.4s. It's a pretty crazy setup under here, and this car has the perfect stance. The tires and wheels are tucked way up in there. The wheels are actually modern renditions of the famous motor wheel flies, which is what he ran on the Cheese Whiz 55 back in the day. They are awesome. This car is awesome. I'm glad I got to see it in person. Now here's another lesson in stance. This is another shiny car, but this thing's got some cool old school details and just the perfect stance. This was built by Tim Strange. He's out of the Nashville, Tennessee area, and he built this for his dad. It's a 65 Chevelle. It's got a big block in there, and to get this car to sit this low, it doesn't have air suspension. It just sits like this. To get it to sit this low, he had to build a custom frame. He had to move the engine up and back. I mean, it's got a ton of custom details. I couldn't leave the Street Rod Nationals without showing you guys the Cacklefest. This year there was 4 cars, including Randy Wall's Supernova, big block Chevrolet, magnesium blower with a custom 4-port injector on nitromethane. This is a pretty significant car. It ran really good back in the day. It beat the big guys, and it's not the only significant car here on the property. Next is the Doug's Headers Corvair funny car, and you can see that custom paint work on here, gold wheels, and this one's got big block Chevy power as well. It's got a polished blower, polished injector hat. It's got a few modern pieces on it, but it is really, really nicely built. Top-notch details. This is basically a show car, but when it cranks up, it doesn't sound like a show car. It sounds like it's ready to race. There were 2 front-engine dragsters involved in the Cacklefest. First was the 1967 Top Fuel Championship winning dragster of Hundley and Boggs. The other dragster comes from the Nitro Syndicate camp, and it's not necessarily a tribute or a replica of any particular car. It's just a very well done vintage style front engine dragster, and it's running on a heavy load of nitromethane.